The Jets 2026 draft is now complete and in the books. We have 3 first-round picks to talk about, a developmental quarterback, multiple moves throughout the draft. How are we feeling, Jets fans? Let's talk about it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Jets Talk Now. I am Paul Fiore. Please click like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys for joining. So I waited until all 7 rounds before I recorded any reaction video. I was essentially live tweeting throughout the draft my reactions to the picks. So anybody that follows me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, will know that for the most part, I was very happy with the vast majority of the early picks. Had some questions about the Klubnik move, which we'll talk about. But let's just start off right away. Round 1, pick 2, the Jets selecting David Bailey, edge from Texas Tech, over Arvell Reese. This was a debate that was going on for weeks amongst the fan base and the media, national media leaning towards Bailey, local media, maybe with the exception of, Rich Cimini saying Arvell Reese. You had the fans heavily divided in this. I think they were really a big section of fans that only wanted Reese and big section of fans that wanted Bailey. I was always somewhat in the middle on this. I was a lean to Arvell Reese. It took me until probably 2 weeks before the draft to fully get there. And really my lean was because of his versatility. With that said, being honest, I also said I wouldn't be upset if they drafted David Bailey because I'd understand the pick. And when you pull back, I think for a moment and think about it, there was a lot of noise. I don't know if everybody remembers, but that if the Jets took David Bailey, there was going to be an army of people trying to move up with the Cardinals to get to 3 to draft Arvell Reese. Well, obviously that was not true because the Arizona Cardinals stuck to their pick and got Jeremiah Love. And so then obviously you would have assumed, well, now if he falls to 4, Tennessee's going to field a bunch of phone calls for Arvell Reese. Or Saleh himself, the defensive head coach, is going to choose him. And what does Tennessee do? They don't trade out and they don't draft Reese. They draft Carnell Tate, who for me, that's a reach at 4. I think he's a number 2 wide receiver on a good football team. I do not think he's a lead dog. That's just my personal opinion. He has never been the lead dog. So picking him at 4 with a defensive head coach was fascinating to me. So he falls to the Giants. The Giants pick him at 5. And they're like, okay, now the Giants are going to have, Arvell Reese. They didn't expect to get him. They're going to develop him into an edge. And you listen to Harbaugh, and what did he say? Well, he plans on playing him essentially at off-ball linebacker. So I think this is one of those interesting things where, as much as I loved Reese for his versatility, it seems like the league may have viewed him as pretty much a predominant off-ball linebacker who can rush the passer, and they devalued him a little bit. So I don't think it was as clear as some people looked at it, that he was this surefire 2nd overall pick, number 1 defensive player in the draft. So the Jets choosing David Bailey, from the perspective of they were the worst team, or I think they were the worst team in the NFL, or 2nd worst team in the NFL at getting to the quarterback last year. And, getting a guy that is really good at getting to the quarterback by evidence of not only his sacks, but his overall pressure statistics throughout the year, just makes sense. So for everyone that was against Bailey or was a heavy Reese guy, you got to be able to logic yourself into understanding why they went to Bailey. And so for me, a David Bailey selection at 2, my initial reaction was I really wanted Reese. I was a little disappointed. But when you pull back from it, I think you got to look at this as a solid, really good football player. People don't put this in the Vernon Golston camp and things like this. Is a really good football player. Had 14.5 sacks last year at Texas Tech. He's a disruptive force. He's quick as hell. And I think the Jets are looking at this very, very simply. They're trying to build their foundation for this long-term success and, the vision of this team playing really a base 3-4 with multiple fronts is get a bunch of big dudes in the middle that are going to help stop the run and get guys on the edge that can beat their man with speed and pin their ears back and get to the quarterback. So am I concerned about his run defense? Not nearly as much as Will McDonald. I think Will McDonald is definitely not good at playing the run. I think it's overstated Bailey and his ability to play the run, and I think he can get better at it. I watched his presser. I like the kid a lot. I love his mindset. It's a good pick, right? So you can't complain there. Now, and I think for the most part, fans wrap their brain around that. People really were torn on the Kenyon Sadiq pick at 16. Now, if you watch my channel, you would know about a month or so ago, and I had been on, I think, with Jake and Nick Shine, and I had said this leading up to the draft. My crazy ass was running multiple mock drafts and kept landing on Tate was gone, Tyson was gone, and now it was left with Lemon, Cooper, and Sadiq. And I was in the camp that I put Lemon and Sadiq kind of on the same level of a pass catcher from one perspective. I don't think Lemon has anything that creates the mismatch at wide receiver as much as I think his total package is really strong. I think he's a really good football player, but like he's not a burner. He's not incredibly big. I think he has sure hands, and I think he's a really good wide receiver, good route runner. But I think he's a true wide receiver too. And I don't know how much I valued him over, Cooper to set just for what I want him to do. Is he a better player? Likely, yes. We don't know that yet. We'll see. But, I think for what we were looking for, did I think Lemon was going to be that much better than Cooper in the value of the player? I didn't see that. I could be wrong, but that's just my view. Kenyon Sadiq, when you run a sub 4.4 out of the tight end spot and you watch his film and the things that he's capable of doing, I think you look at that guy as a complete matchup nightmare. And many people that I had spoken to expected him to get drafted by Baltimore or even Kansas City, considering their situations at tight end. So every time I drafted him at 16 in mocks, people were like, oh, he's not going to be there, so you're wasting your time. But I had said if he was there at 16, I would seriously consider him as long as I was looking for a pass catcher after that, right? Because he didn't solve wide receiver 2. What he does do is he creates a scenario where you can play Taylor and Sadiq on the field at the same time. You can play, you can watch the defense, and you can play off of what the defense shows you when those guys are both on the field. He is a willing blocker. It is overstated that he's not a good blocker. That's absurd. Just watch the tape. When he's out in space blocking, he's really good. Is he going to block, your best edges and things like that? No, but he's a willing, solid blocker. And you know what? If you're trying to take Brees and bounce him on the outside, can Sadiq do the job that he needs to do to set openings for Brees? Absolutely. You can also then just you can split him out wide. And he acts as any weapon at wide receiver when you're running a sub 4.4. He's slightly undersized at 6'3.5", but look at his tape. Did he have some drops last year? He did. Am I concerned to a level that people like he can't catch the football? No. And yeah, he didn't have 1,000 yards receiving last year, but you have to also understand Oregon's offense when you look at that in totality. He became a much bigger factor on that team as the year went on, and was an extremely important part of their vertical offense. I mean, he had multiple 20-plus yard receptions on that football team. This is a guy that can actually break away. This is a guy that is sort of a unicorn when you look at his overall physical attributes. I love the pick at 16 with Sadiq. I love it a lot more because they came back into round 1 and drafted Cooper Jr. at 30. They basically went and moved from 33 to 30 It only cost them a 5th-round pick, right? It made a ton of sense at the time, so they were able to pick up a fifth-year option on a guy they really liked. Better than that, they jumped the Bills, who were obviously going to take Cooper because they traded out immediately after the Jets went and got Cooper at 30. So Sadiq to me was a home run pick, and then when you add Cooper into the mix, I don't know how anybody could be mad at that. I really don't. And even if you want to say, I mean, people were mocking Cooper at 16 to the Jets. So if they would have, let's say they would have gotten Cooper at 16, they wouldn't have gotten Sadiq at 30. It was reported on NFL Network and everywhere else that people were trying to move up for Sadiq as he started to fall. Like everyone's like, well, Philly went and got Lemon, but they tried to get Sadiq first, right? So I think it's just kind of, don't get caught up in the moment of Mason Taylor was already here. He was drafted in the 2nd round last year. It's a bad use of resources. Don't think of Sadiq like your average tight end. Would you feel that way if the Jets had Travis Kelce in his prime? Would you feel that way if the Jets had Vernon Davis in his prime? Like this is the type of player that creates lots of opportunities, not just for himself, but for everyone else on the field. He opens up the offense. So Sadiq to me was a home run pick. Cooper at 30 after Sadiq just compounded the overall positive nature with which I viewed the 1st round, because Omar Cooper Jr. after the catch is a weapon. And when you watch him, he is really difficult to take down. He plays with violence. He's super aggressive. He's got really good hands. He's quick. I think, yes, he played mostly out of the slot this year. So you wonder, okay, well, if he was in the slot and now you got Sadiq and Garrett likes to play, you know, Garrett's outside, but he's played in the slot too. What are you doing? Well, I don't think you can look at it that way, because he may have been playing in the slot because of their offense and how they were structured. I don't think there's a world where Cooper can't play on the outside, because he did. He did it more the year before last, but I think that he can do both, and I love the versatility that he provides you. So for me, Omar Cooper Jr. was an excellent pick. So round 1, day 1, I'm giving, you know, for me, it was like, wow, the Jets picked the one guy that I really wanted. And I was like, okay, in round 2, if you have to get a Denzel Boston, that was kind of what I was looking at, Sadiq and then a Boston Sadiq and then, you know, someone else. So for me to get Sadiq and Cooper in round 1 after getting David Bailey, the best pass rusher in the draft, pure pass rusher in the draft, if you don't think that that's an A-, B+ at worst, I just think that you're in the mindset that is easy to fall into as a Jet fan, which is same old Jets, woe is us, we're bad, we'll always be bad. I wanted, and it's a lot of the mindset is I wanted Reese at 2, I wanted Lemon at 16, and then I would have traded down from 33 and added more capital. That was a lot of the mindset. But, you know, I saw people who were upset, not upset, but saying it's that the Jets should have traded out of 16 to move up into the top 10 to get Jordan Tyson at 7 or Tate at 7, and Tate was gone at 4. And then you would have lost pick 44. So to me, and 103 for that matter, to me, they did a really great job of reading the board and getting the guys that they really wanted, that I think transforms them offensively and gives Geno tons of weapons. I mean, if you just look at the Jets offense right now, and I said this before the draft, they had one difference maker on offense, because I don't consider your offensive line difference makers. They're the guys that help the difference makers actually have better years, right? But the Jets now have Garrett on, you know, so think about this. They have Garrett, Cooper, and A.D. Mitchell is now your wide receiver 3. You have Mason Taylor, Kenyon Sadiq as your 2 tight ends. Ruckert's the blocking tight end, whatever. Then Hall, Allen, and Davis. When was the last time the Jets had that complete of a team with a good offensive line? Not amazing, not great. They still have, I wanted them to get a guard they got later on in the draft, but they have a really, like, foundationally speaking, the Jets have a young, fast, versatile offense where you can move the pieces all over the field. Now, it's up to Frank Reich to be able to do that, and maybe he leans heavily on Rex's kid as the pass game coordinator to find ways to get guys open. But if you're Geno behind that line, you should very easily have outlets to be able to avoid pressure on a consistent basis, because you have guys that are coming out of the backfield who can catch the ball. You have guys that are great yards after the catch guys, screen guys that can go over the middle and through, or guys that can go deep like an AD Mitchell. That is a very versatile, fun offense that the Jets have been lacking desperately for years. They are set up beautifully to draft the quarterback in 2027 with that talent. I do not believe in any world Omar Cooper Jr. is not going to be a good wide receiver too. I do not believe Kenyon Sadiq is not going to be a very, very good tight end one. I think he's going to be one of those guys fans are going to love. So when you add those two to the mix of what they had, and if AD Mitchell can be the guy that's really good at getting the deep ball and he develops and stops some of those drops, Jets are in a really good spot on offense. They are. I think they're going to be more fun than they've been to watch on offense in years. So those are your top three. End of day one, B+, A-. I was very, very happy. Day two, there was a ton of guys on the board that I was excited about, just going into this, being honest. I was looking for, obvious emphasis on defense. We only had the 44th pick, and then it was going to go all the way to Saturday at 103. And so, when the pick came at 44, I was kind of an EMW guy. I was hoping they would get him. I felt like he filled a big gap and a hole, but that was just me. And that was my perspective on it. There was a couple other guys I liked a lot. I believe Jacob Rodriguez, who went at 43, was probably the number one target for the Jets at that point. I'm guessing he was the linebacker they had rated over a lot of other guys on their board, because the minute that Rodriguez was drafted at 43, the Jets took 44, traded out down to 50, picked up an extra 4th-round pick, which essentially allowed them to recoup and get up from where they were when they moved out of 33 to 30, and they drafted Pons. I was not fully on the Pons train, and this is also why I wanted to wait a little bit before I had a full reaction video. I know a lot of people had Pons to the Jets and were really on that. So I took some time after they drafted him, because they really didn't do anything between, that pick and day 3, to see what was, I watched a lot of Indiana football, obviously, because I was watching Mendoza. But I didn't pay a lot of attention to Pons during those games. I know he made some really big plays. But I went back and I'm like, let me look at Pons, because I was a little worried about his size, but man, I was watching how fast he is and his vertical, and okay. So as I went back and I watched him play football, he plays the complete opposite personality-wise of Sauce Gardner. Sauce was this incredibly gifted corner in his ability to cover, because he's so lanky and long, and he blankets the wide receivers, right? But what was our criticism of Sauce really starting year 2 into year 3 was his lack of willingness to tackle and be aggressive at the point of attack. He's more of a finesse corner. And while he's still a really good corner, you just wish that the guy would have been, I don't know, more aggressive. I can't think of a better word. When you look at Pons play, the guy plays with an edge, man. He is an aggressive sucker. He hits. He really is good at tracking the quarterback's eyes and anticipating. I watched a bunch of him against much larger wide receivers do a great job on the outside. And, a lot of people comp him to Aaron Glenn, and I can understand that. I was thinking about it because we were all talking about his size. Is that really going to prohibit him from being able to play outside? And I thought about DJ Reed, who was a Jet for obvious, couple of years and a great compliment to Sauce. And really until his last year, I think was a really good player for the Jets. I don't think anybody would complain about who DJ Reed was as a player, as a Jet, until the final year when he became kind of a disgruntled negative guy. He's 5'9", doesn't have the speed of Pons, doesn't have the physical attributes of Pons, and did a really good job because he's a physical, tough corner. I like Pons a lot because of those reasons. It's a good pick. He's probably their most talented corner that they have when you actually look at it in totality. I think even though, I wanted a safety, the Jets have 4 safeties, I believe, currently on there that are rostered right now. Maybe the Jets didn't see safety. I think 5. I'm sorry. They drafted Payne in the 7th round. I don't think the Jets saw the need at safety as much as I might have thought. Right. So corner, it was a need. It is. I mean, Stevens is on a final year of his deal. You have Stiggers, who's okay. He's kind of I think he's a rotational player. Brownlee, same thing. I think he's okay. He's got some penalty issues. I think he's a rotational player. AZ Thomas coming off of an injury. We don't really know, but we hope he's going to be a starting corner long-term for us. Stevens is on the final year of his deal, and he did a decent job last year. I think, the middle of his year was way better than the beginning and the end of his year. But if you just take a step back, Pons is a versatile guy. They talked about playing him inside and outside. I think it was a really good pick. I'm happy there. So day 2 ends. The Jets just draft Pons. They walk into day 3 armed with 3 4th-round picks and 2 7th-round picks. There were, I felt at that time, openings for guard, center, safety, and linebacker. I was big on Kilgore was available, Connor Lew was available, Hecht was available, and Lewis was available. Those were kind of my guys at the top of round 4 that I was really looking to. I thought specifically Lew was a guy that if you drafted him after he comes off this ACL, I think he would have been a 2nd-round pick if he didn't have the ACL. My belief was Lew was the best center in the draft. And I think the Jets have a weak spot there because I think Myers is a backup level player on an offensive line that's otherwise pretty good. So I would have liked Lew as a guy that maybe halfway through the season became the starter. Jets thought differently. They decided to go and get more beef for their line. They got Jackson, massive a man, huge, long arms, but developmental D tackle, right? And so you look at it and you go, okay, I see the vision of what they're doing. The Jets have so much inside beef now, run stuffing type players. It's what Glenn kind of migrates to. It's what he had in Detroit. This guy's a violent player. Another one that's just kind of a nasty attitude. Wasn't my first choice. I call it a solid B of a pick because I think that if you can, I trust Carl Dunbar. If Carl Dunbar wanted him, and you can't argue that Carl Dunbar doesn't know more than any of us fans about guys that could develop at the 4th round and become something really important to an overall, D-line long term. And so I think I'm taking more of a measured view of it and saying he wasn't my guy. He wasn't on my board in any way, but who the hell am I? I'm a fan that was just drafting at need. And the Jets went and looked at it and said, he's the guy that we think can develop into a long-term answer when there's only Sweat that's on contract through the end of this year in those positions. So they drafted him. I'm going to call it a B from my perspective. I was fine with the pick. The thing that was a bit of a jolt for me, and I've had an opportunity now 24 hours later to take a step back, was the Jets then packaged their 2 fourth-round picks, 128 and 144, to move up to 110 and select Cade Clubnik. At the time when they moved up, I'm like, okay, they're packaging these two guys. I did not think they were packaging for a QB. I really didn't. So I was shocked that it was Klubnik, because in every single, and this again, this shows you, I think, in a vacuum, the difference between the mock draft community at large and the NFL war rooms and how they view players. It happened last year with Shador. It happens every year. There's a guy that falls that you didn't expect. Garrett Nussmeier got drafted in the 7th round. You had everybody and their mother saying there was a chance he'd be drafted at the back end of round 2 into early round 3, certainly not getting past round 3. That was what people were saying. And Beck went earlier than people were expecting, and Aller went earlier than people were expecting, and Nuss didn't go till the 7th round. So we do not know as fans how the Jets viewed Klubnik versus other draft rooms. And so the Jets met with him extensively. They met with all these guys extensively. And I think probably wanted Aller, but weren't going to go and spend a 3rd-round pick on Aller, which I didn't want. I wanted Aller, but I didn't want to spend a 3rd-round pick on him. The Jets went and said, all right, he's our guy. We really like him. Not to be the franchise QB long-term, but to be a guy that we can develop, put him in the room, smart kid, had a really good 2024, had a really bad 2025, but he's athletic enough. He has nice touch on the ball. We think, Musgrave and Reichs sit there and they go, look, in all our meetings, he was on it. He understood the offensive install. We think that he's a guy we can develop. And they put their name to that. And the Jets said, all right, we don't want to risk that if we don't take him here, someone's going to take him between now and 128 and 144. And I'm assuming Muji had intel that someone, and I don't know who that would have been, so I'm not even going to pretend to, but someone between, 110, 128 might take him or move up for him. So they drafted him. Now, again, did I want that? I did not. I don't love Cade Clubnik. I don't hate him, but I just don't see this. I don't see the upside. I liked Cole Payton just because he's more of a lottery pick on physical traits than Klubnik. But Cole Payton went significantly later than Klubnik. And like I said, I didn't want Nuss at all. I thought he was too small. I didn't like the injury. And then what came out on his physical after the fact made me nervous. And he went really late. So Klubnik is a guy that the Jets are going to spend a fair amount of time trying to develop into a QB2. He is not the guy that is going to become the franchise QB. You should not have that expectation. You shouldn't think that way as a fan. And so, but that doesn't mean ultimately he doesn't turn out to be a good pick. He is not James Morgan. I'm no offense, Connor Hughes, but they are not anywhere near the same player. Klubnik was a decorated, highly touted prospect. James Morgan was not. Klubnik was thought of as a 1st-round pick going into this year before he fell on his face for a multitude of reasons, not only his own. It's crazy to me that I don't know how people do this. Just like Drew Aller is not Christian Hackenberg, Cade Clubnik, it's not James Morgan. Doesn't mean he's going to be good. But could he become a serviceable QB2 that if you have to put him in for a game or 2 or 3, when inevitably your starting quarterback gets hurt, time will tell. And if the Jets develop him into that and they save themselves the $10 million to $12 million a year it costs to have a backup QB2, that is a great pick long-term. Right now, I can't see that. I gave it a D in the moment, not because of the player, but because of the cost. And again, it's mainly because I wanted a safety. I wanted a linebacker. Jets did not really address the linebacker at all in the draft. It is what it is. In a vacuum, there's nothing wrong with him as the pick to develop as your QB2. I wanted them to take a QB swing. Let's see what the kid does. I loved what he had to say in his interview. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Obviously, Reich loves him. Great. If you can develop a young guy into a QB2, even if we're not thrilled with the pick, it doesn't matter in the long run if you develop the kid. But let's not call it James Morgan, please. Let's all be better and smarter about the difference between these two players. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I was upset about the pick, but I wasn't outraged about the pick. The outrage online about the pick was kind of crazy. It's a 4th-round pick. People are like, oh, Muji's got to get fired. Like, come on. I mean, this is not going to determine whether Darren Muji is or isn't the GM of the Jets in 2027. Results on the field, the results of the picks that they made, whether Aaron Glenn can put it all together is what's going to determine these guys' future. Not a 4th-round QB who may be QB2 in the future. That's not it. So I take a step back there. From there, you know, what did the Jets do? They address the guard position with Inez Cooper, long-term starting guard from Miami. You know, I think when you look at it, you can't argue with the production, right? I mean, 3-year starter. Last year, he, I'm pulling it up right now. I believe he did not allow 1 sack in all of his reps. And so, you know, you got to look at that and go, you know, at that point in the draft, right? And they picked him at pick 188, round 6. They moved up to get him. It's a good developmental pick, a guy that can be in your room who, you know, maybe he develops into something big, nasty, not really athletic, but super strong, value pick to me. And then in round 7, and I can't say, you know, I'm not going to get too crazy about this because I don't know much about the player. I just go based on what I know from other people that are way smarter than me and spend a lot more time on college football. But, you know, drafting Payne at a Kansas State as a safety in round 7, I had seen across a bunch of various different pre-draft grades. Most had him as a 4th-round talent. So to get him at the back of the draft in round 7, kind of a hybrid type player, really, he's a big kid, quick, probably a special teams type player in, you know, developmental player. I think it's a really good value, right? So when you just take a step back and you look at the entirety of the Jets draft and you combine it with what they did in free agency, which was raise the floor with people around, with players that are competent, good football players, no superstars. They didn't have any superstars in free agency, but guys that raise the floor. And you compare the roster as it sits today to where it sat at the end of 2025. If you walk out of all of this and going into, you know, training camp, viewing the Jets as not vastly improved, I don't know what more they could have done really to have this rebuild move in the right direction. I would give their draft a solid B+, A-, in spite of the Klubnik move. And again, not because of the player as much as because of using capital. But in the end, we'll learn over the next few years what Klubnik is. It's not going to be year 1 because he's not going to play. If he is playing, it likely means that Glenn's getting fired because that would mean the season completely derailed. Which leads me to my final point. What do we expect going in now to 2026 as a team from a win-loss perspective? It's going to evolve over time. This is not a final view of where I think this will be. But my early take is this should be a floor 6-win team. Ceiling, and it's a very close floor ceiling, 8-win team. So if you just put a ceiling floor on it, 6 to 8 wins, Why? Because I think Geno's going to be competent. I don't think Geno's going to have some kind of crazy rebound season. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's got so many weapons that he can't be awful. And I think that Reich will design an offense where he is getting the ball downfield. He'll be making mistakes for sure because it's Geno, but I think he'll have a pretty decent year. I think he'll be, anywhere probably between the 20th and 25th ranked QB in the league. Do I think it's preposterous to think he can't give you a Rodgers season, the last season that Rodgers was here? I don't. I think it's very realistic. I mean, the Jets won 5 games that year. But I would say that was mostly, if the defense was at least serviceable, they would have won 8 or 9. So when I give the ceiling of, 6 to 7, 8 wins, a floor ceiling, it's because I think when you look around the league, I was doing this with Nick Shine last night. On the schedule, I see 6 wins that I think they should be able to pick up, right? Like, I think Miami's bad, and the Jets need to win both of those games. I think the Jets at home have to beat the Raiders. They should beat the Browns. Even though the Browns are much improved, I think the Jets should beat them at home, right? And so if you go 3 wins at home, not guaranteed, but that you feel good about, I think when you look at their schedule on the road, I feel similarly about their road games. And if you can pick off a win against the Patriots, or find another win somewhere, whether that's Minnesota, I think they'll beat Arizona. I don't think Arizona is very good. I think the Jets' floor should be 6 wins. And I think the ceiling is not much higher than the floor. I think it's a 6-7 win football team. 8 if things go really, really right. But if they win less than 6 games, I don't see a world where Aaron Glenn comes back. Because I just think you have to show more progress than that. So I know it's not exciting to hear 6-11 or 7-10, but you got to be realistic about where they're coming from. They were a 3-win football team. They tore it down to the studs during the season last year. That team ended 2025. If you want to have a joking comparison, right? Like, you think about Ted Lasso, they could all have almost been relegated. They were so bad. They rebuilt the team to the point where I think they should be competent. So I think they're a 6-7 win team, 6 or 7 win team. And I think they'll be competitive. And if they're 6 or 7 wins and competitive in their losses, Glenn gets his shot at his quarterback in 2027. I think that's just the reality. If they win 6 games and they get blown out a bunch of times and they're a 6-11 team with a bunch of blowouts, I think it's very, very shaky ground that he comes back. Muji probably would. If they win 4 games or 5 games and they look awful and there's not progress, they probably are both gone. So I think there's those scenarios. I think there's a scenario where Muji stays and gets to pick his head coach. I think there's a scenario where they both get fired. And I think there's a scenario where they both get to pick the franchise quarterback in 2027. If Frank Reich's vision for the offense this year unlocks Sadiq, gets Geno to be competent, and they run a good offense, they're too good, I think, as an overall roster to be god-awful. And now people are going to say that leaves them QB purgatory going into 2027. You're overthinking this. That is not true. Good football teams find a way to find their franchise quarterback. He may not be number 1 in the first overall pick. That doesn't mean he won't be the guy that they can develop into QB1 in the future. The Rams just drafted the guy that they believe is going to take over from Matt Stafford, and it was the Rams. The Broncos drafted Bo Nix later in the draft. I mean, there's Josh Allen wasn't the first quarterback taken in the draft. Patrick Mahomes wasn't the first quarterback taken in the draft. Lamar Jackson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. If the Jets have good talent evaluation, worst case, if the world is that the Jets win 7 games this year and are picking 15, and they have 3 first-round picks in 2027 plus their 2028 draft capital, if you don't think the Jets can't find a way to move up to get one of the guys that they're going to like, because they'll like multiple guys for their future franchise QB, then you're just, again, you're stuck in this mindset that I've actually been guilty of myself, where the Jets will forever be awful. And it's easy to feel that way after what happened with the Rodgers 2-year disaster. I was not that way until the Rodgers saga. I'm trying to pull myself out of that. I'm not trying to be overly optimistic. I'm not trying to be overly pessimistic. I'm trying to be realistic about this franchise, realistic about what the future looks like, and try to look at this through sober eyes. And a sober view of the world says the Jets had a good draft. The Jets had a good offseason and free agency. They are set up nicely with a strong foundation now for a franchise quarterback in 2027 and some additional pieces along the defense. If they can do those things, I think they have the opportunity to be a sustained good franchise. Now, will it all matter in the end if they can't find the quarterback? No. It will be the downfall of this organization, as it has been to any organization that can't find their future franchise quarterback. But do I think there's the opportunity that they've put themselves in the position to get there? I do. And if that puts me in the world of overly optimistic and delusional, then again, I would take a look at myself in the mirror as someone who doesn't agree with that and say, am I just overly negative because of how badly this franchise has treated me for the last 15 years? Because I think you have every right to feel the way you feel. And I am still in the whole wait and see mindset, but I am cautiously optimistic that they have a vision and a direction moving forward. So we will see what happens this year. We'll see how it all plays itself out. We still do not know if Aaron Glenn can coach as a head coach, but I do think that he will lean heavily on Frank Reich and running that offense, and Glenn will lean into what he thinks he knows on defense, and maybe we actually will have a fun, averagely badish, not bad, an average 7-win season where you see hope for the future. Maybe they surprise us and win 8. Hopefully they're not an absolute atrocity. We'll see what happens. Anyway, those are my thoughts for the draft. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Please comment and let me know. Do you like the draft? Do you hate the draft? I would give it a B+, A- overall. And they literally drafted one guy out of the board that I wanted. But I'm also realistic that mock drafts mean nothing. And really, I feel great about the direction of the future of the franchise. Don't know about Glenn. I'm still on the side that I don't know if he's going to make it as a head coach, but I'm rooting for him. I feel good about Muji overall. I think Muji's earned his stripes, and I think he will have this job going into the next season regardless, because I don't think the Jets are going to be an absolute abomination. But we all know the Jets, no matter what our expectations are, they surprise us one way or the other. So 15 years of futility. I think things are moving in the right direction, but time will tell. Thanks for joining. I hope you guys have a great one. Talk to you soon.